Over 60 years since the first Grand Prix took place in Brno in 1965. The class of 2026 are ready for race day 9, with the old pitch remaining on the road to the current Brno track as a nod to the former street circuit and its proud history. We're closer to Vienna over the border in Austria than the picturesque capital of Prague. Well, who will tame the adrenaline factory? It's time to race in MotoGP. .4 kilometres, 3.36 miles in length, 14 turns, 8 right, 6 of them left. And this is a track that gets the juices flowing. It's called the Adrenaline Factory, first built back in 1987. First Grand Prix in this part of the world all the way back in 1965. It has a little bit of everything. High-speed corners, hard braking and spectacular undulation. And a full sector which is pretty unique in characteristics because it's almost entirely uphill as you power out of horsepower hill through 12, 13 and 14. 1, 3 and 5 are the most demanding braking points for the Brembo brakes. Turn 3 is the hardest braking spot on the entire circuit. And this was where Marc Marquez pounced on Marco Bezzecchi to take a double win here in Brno last July. Well, the first Japanese pole position in MotoGP in 6 long years, so Agura lead the field away at the start of what proved to be a very dramatic and ultimately controversial 10-lap Tissot sprint. Diogo Moreira, an early faller out of 3rd place after he started on the 2nd row of the grid. Pedro Acosta, battling technical issues on the factory KTM, tumbled out of contention at turn 11. Pecco Bagnaia, it was that got the whole shots, and he toured to his first win since the Malaysian Grand Prix sprint last year. This, though, a massive talking point in the campaign so far as Marco Bezzecchi tumbled out of 5th place on the second to last lap. The ramifications of that particular incident and what followed shortly after is having a massive impact on this upcoming 21-lap Grand Prix of Czechia. More on that shortly as Pecco Bagnaia hones in on what he hopes will be his 10th double victory in MotoGP. Last time the Italian was able to claim sprint glory and Grand Prix glory on the same weekend was on that unforgettable weekend for Ducati in the Motegi Mountains. The double win for Bagnaia on the same day that Marc Marquez was crowned MotoGP World Champion for the 7th time of asking. 100 Grand Prix came up last time in Balaton for the reigning world champion. Marc Marquez battling his way to a sprint podium here yesterday. But the major news which emerged late here in Brno last night, shortly after 11 p.m, after appealing to the FIA MotoGP Stewards Board, it was confirmed after an altercation with a trackside marshal while they were in the process of recovering Marco Bezzecchi's crashed factory Aprilia at turn 3. Marco Bezzecchi is missing from this afternoon's round 9. Banned from participating in this race. Actions prejudicial to the interests of the sport. The reason why the World Championship leader has been benched, sidelined for this Grand Prix of Czechia, which will start in about 40 minutes time in the company of Matt Burton Lewis sort of in the commentary box. Jack Appleyard down a scorching hot pit lane. Temperatures in excess of 30 degrees. Is more punishment coming the way of Marco Bezzecchi. His factory Aprilia teammate Jorge Martin, despite the fact he had to serve 2 long laps after his controversial collision with multiple riders in Balaton a couple of weeks ago. If he does recover from those 2 long laps and finishes on the podium, well, it will mean Martin will go to Assen next weekend as the World Championship leader. It hasn't all been bad news as far as Aprilia go here this weekend, because for the first time in MotoGP, first time since 2020 when Taka Nakagami led qualifying in Aragon, a Japanese star will fire away from the head of the grid. Agura pole to 2nd in yesterday's sprint. So much to talk about, Lewis. So many major incidents have happened this weekend which have a major impact on the championship picture as we approach the halfway stage. The biggest story of all, of course, Marco Bezzecchi, World Championship leader, banned and out of this Brno battle.
Yeah, having already made a pretty big unforced error not for the first time in Saturday sprints in 2026, the fourth time this year. Marco Bezzecchi has DNF'd a sprint. He will not start today. He is here, as you can see. There he is inside the Prix box. He did head out first thing this morning, shortly after the sun came up, to go and apologise. You're watching it now. This is down at turn 3, going to apologise to the marshal who he struck yesterday in his anger after the crash, and what he felt was perhaps the not correct way of lifting his motorcycle. Nothing justifies contact with the marshal, and Marco Bezzecchi apologising in tearful manner in person, but also via social media. Those are his comments on screen. Marco Bezzecchi, a helpless and a rather forlorn spectator for today's Czech Grand Prix.
And it was a very emotional Marco Bezzecchi who came back to turn 3 to apologise to the marshal involved in the incident yesterday post-sprint. There was a sort of a peace pact as they embraced, and Marco handed over a set of his gloves. Yeah, of course, a moment that he is going to regret that for some time. So there you can see, tears are flowing for Marco Bezzecchi as he gets back onto the scooter. An unwanted spectator then in this upcoming 21-lap race. All he can hope for then now is to hope that somehow he's still leading the World Championship heading to Assen next weekend. More remorseful hugs to the marshal, without question. Probably the most hardest and toughest moment of Marco Bezzecchi's career. There's been so many highlights for him on a personal level this season. Already a 4 times Grand Prix winner in 2026. He won 5 Grand Prix on the spin in that golden run to close 2025, winning the first 3 Grand Prix in 2026. Out of character for such a popular and likeable character like Marco is. He is going to be full of remorse, full of regret. Sadly sidelined though for this upcoming battle.
Yeah, he can't control how the rest of the public responds to that. He's just going to have to focus on his own job starting next weekend. As you can see there on screen, Fabio Antonio, who starts second on the grid, is waiting to speak to our Jack. Jack, over to you.
Yeah, great to be joined by Fabio ahead of what really does present itself as a huge opportunity today. Middle of the front row, valuable for grabs.
Yeah, ready. For me, honestly, it's a race like another one, so we need to do our maximum and then we see where we end.
Good luck, have fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Fabio Di Antonio, the boss this trackside, Valentino Rossi, present here in Brno. It feels like it's the optimal moment for Digi to maybe win once again for VR46. 30 years ago, here in the Czech Republic, was when Valentino Rossi's glittering career really did get a massive launch pad with his very first win in the 125cc battle back in 1996. Tough weekend so far for Raul Fernandez, fresh off being diagnosed with a rather nasty bout of appendicitis, which thankfully for Raul didn't require surgery. A real strong fighting top 6 for the Trackhouse Prix rider yesterday in the sprint.
And going in search of a Czech double this weekend is Pecco Bagnaia, who is wearing a smile, which he's had all weekend because he loves this place. Who doesn't love the Motodrome Brno? And Pecco Bagnaia riding like the world champion we know he is yesterday, seizing the lead from pole sitter here, Ayagura, at the start of the sprint, pushing like crazy, he said, for the first 3 laps to try and build up that advantage, and then withstanding the sprint long pressure from Agura. Bagnaia, a first sprint win of the season. Can he back that up with a first Grand Prix win of the year?
Ayagura, just the 10th Japanese rider in MotoGP history to be firing away from pole position. It has been 22 very long years since Japanese fans have roared one of their own to home to success in MotoGP. Makoto Tamada Motegi in the Japanese Grand Prix all the way back in 2004. Is today the day that Ayagura ends that long streak. Marc Marquez, well, back to winning form, back on a winning streak. Last time out in Balaton, a brilliant double win for the reigning world champion. 102 points behind Marco Bezzecchi he was going into that Grand Prix of Hungary, and with Bez absent from the action this afternoon, Marc Marquez 65 points off the summit at the top of the championship. What an opportunity this is for some of the Ducati stars. Did you, and Marc Marquez in particular, to start putting on some serious pressure on Aprilia at the top of this championship?
Yeah, in the Riders' Championship, so many with opportunities today, which includes Jorge Martin in second in the championship, even though he has a double long lap penalty to come. He's 15 points behind Bezzecchi, so he could potentially take the championship lead if he gets back to the podium. But we've got Digit 36 back, Acosta 48 back, and Marc Marquez 65 back, who might all feel that their championship challenges could be ignited today. This was the action yesterday. Pecco Bagnaia now watching along with us, and you can see the joy and exultation from Bagnaia. You don't usually see him as demonstrative and the body language quite like that when he wins a sprint, but it tells you what kind of road he's been on over the last year and a half or so. The toughest period of Bagnaia's career for much of last year. Of course, after winning in Japan last year, we didn't see him score another Sunday point for the rest of 2025. There's no question that Bagnaia is better in 2026. Maybe not quite back to his best. We just got a taste of that yesterday afternoon.
Sprint win number 14 for the 29-year-old Italian. A record equaling 34th sprint podium for Bagnaia as well, sharing 34 sprint top threes with Jorge Martin and Marc Marquez. A case of what might have been yesterday as far as Diogo Moreira goes. His best qualifying in MotoGP, 6th place on the grid yesterday was Moreira, the 22-year-old Brazilian, but unfortunately after a superb start got him inside the top 3 immediately in that sprint. He was down on the deck on the second lap at turn number 12. So Jorge Martin then 15 points behind Marco Bezzecchi in the championship. So we can do the maths. If he's on the podium later this afternoon, if he's third, he gets 16 points and will be 1 point clear of Bezzecchi in the championship. If he is to make the podium, he is going to have to do it the very, very hard way, because after causing that big pile-up at turn 1 in Hungary 2 weeks ago, Martin will be through the long lap not once but twice.
Of course, the rider that he clattered into initially isn't on the grid today. It was his teammate Marco Bezzecchi that he ran into. 3 others also swept up in the action: Aldeguer, Gian Antonio and Raul Fernandez. So important for Martin to get through the first corner safely. It's not the same kind of critical first corner here in Brno, in fairness. It's faster and it's wider, but still important for Martin to stay out of trouble. And those 2 long lap penalties, which in fairness are perhaps the least punishing long lap penalties of the season. It's a short long lap, and of course there isn't a lot of space to fit one in around here. From Moto 2 earlier on in the day, our sort of rough guesstimate is that it takes you around about 1.25 seconds, 1.5 seconds to serve that long lap penalty. So he's going to lose in the region of 2.5 to 3 seconds.
I'm back soon is the message from Gresini Ducati and Alex Marquez. The number 73 did make a welcome return to MotoGP action here in Brno this weekend. He took part in both practice sessions on Friday. There is Alex, just speaking to our Spanish TV colleagues at DAZN. But after qualifying in a strong 14th place yesterday, the Spanish rider, having consulted with the MotoGP medical team and with the Gresini Ducati squad, Alex deciding not worth the risk of thrusting himself back into race competition so quickly after he suffered a neck fracture and a smashed right collarbone in that scary crash with Pedro Acosta in Barcelona a few weeks ago, withdrawing immediately after Q2 yesterday. So Alex Marquez, the 30-year-old Spaniard, will be back in action in just 4 or 5 days time in the Grand Prix of the Netherlands in Assen. But yeah, Alex out of this Grand Prix,
which leaves 20 starters this afternoon for the Czech Grand Prix, down to Toprak Razgatlioglu, who brings up there at the back of the grid after he picked up a 3-place grid penalty yesterday morning. That's the kind of history that Ayagura is looking to make today, looking to become Japan's first winner of a MotoGP race for 22 years. Although you'd never get the impression, would you, looking at Ayagura at any stage through a weekend, or particularly at the moment sitting in the trackhouse box, that there is any pressure at all on Ayagura's shoulders. Always so calm, so chilled. But surely he must have a butterfly or two as he gets set for his first Sunday Grand Prix from pole position.
Only 6 riders in history from Japan have won MotoGP races in the past. Fermin Aldeguer, well, he had a very strong start to our Sunday race action here, having topped the morning warm-up session, which feels like a very long time ago already, doesn't it now? After we've had classic Moto 3 and Moto 2 battles, which went all the way down to the wire. Let's hope for more of the same in the 21-lap MotoGP battle coming up shortly. Another solid performance in the sprint yesterday from Fermin Aldeguer. A couple of points picked up for him. Now, of course, going it alone for Gresini Ducati. And going it alone for the Marquez family here in Brno now is Marc Marquez. A tough ride, but a hard-earned ride for the bronze medal last time, or in the sprint yesterday. Oh, we've just mentioned Alex Marquez, unfortunately sidelined from today's action, but I'm delighted to say he joins Jack right now down in pit lane.
Yeah, great to be joined by Alex Marquez, who, as you can imagine, as ever, has got a big smile on his face. Alex, I spoke to you yesterday, but there'll be thousands, millions around the world that didn't manage to hear those words. So just talk us through the decision to sit out the remainder of the weekends that you made yesterday.
Yeah, you know, it was quite an easy decision for me. I mean, the weekend was much better than what I was expecting before I came here. You know, much more practice than I was expecting, laps, and also the speed was there. But then we decided to stop because it have no sense to take the risk starting from P14, and also, you know, the championship we had too far to dream on a title. So yeah, just, you know, it's like was the first step to the full recovery. It's not that coming here my injuries went worse. In the opposite side went a little bit better, and in 5 days for sure I will be a little bit better, one step more to make and to try to make all the full weekend in Holland.
And I guess as a result you step into sort of fan mode today and you get to watch the race from the outside. So who are you cheering for, and what are your predictions for the race? How do you think it's going to unfold?
Honestly, I was expecting a little bit more cloudy and a little bit less temperature on track, because that will mean that we'll see more overtakes, but with this hot will be difficult for the front tires. So it will be interesting to see how it will be, but I think that, you know, I see Pecco, Marc, Ogura, also Dija with quite a similar rhythm. Also, I think Acosta. So it will be interesting to see and the attacks in the first laps, and then, you know, I think the train will be there.
I said yesterday, we've seen some genius ways over the years to try and get off work to make sure you can watch World Cup matches, but this has got to be new #1. How have you managed to get off work early so you can get a prime seat for the Spain match later?
I mean, you know, I will be able to make siesta after, you know, siesta, then at 6 o'clock the World Cup, and later on some cycling. So I think the best and the perfect schedule this afternoon I had.
Perfect afternoon ahead. Alex, great to see you smiling, and we'll see you in Assen.
Thank you, see you there.
Yeah, not jealous at all. Sounds like an ideal Sunday, doesn't it? A siesta, a bit of cycling, and watching his home nation team compete in the FIFA World Cup. Great to have Alex back on site. Great to see him back in action here on the Gresini Ducati. A shame that he couldn't complete the whole weekend, but he kind of anticipated that pre-weekend. He'll be back with the GP26 in a few days' time in Assen. We just saw, didn't we, briefly, Pedro Acosta on screens out of his 50th MotoGP start. More tech troubles once again for the factory KTM rider. We saw the replay of him crashing out of contention in the sprint yesterday at turn 11. Struggled to deactivate his right eye device. Another milestone appearance today as well for another KTM rider, although Prix his 200th MotoGP start here this afternoon. It wasn't exactly the ideal prep, was it, for Maverick Vinales yesterday, as he crashed moments after Diogo Moreira tumbled out of turn 12 on lap 2 of the sprint.
Didn't get to the end of lap 1 yesterday, did Maverick Vinales, having made his way ultimately, or narrowly missed out on qualifying 2, but does start in the top 12, of course, with Marco Bezzecchi vacating 4th place on the grid. Everyone behind him ultimately moves up, so we've got a KTM at the head of row 3 in Pedro Acosta, and a KTM at the back of row 4, Maverick Vinales, on our 20-rider grid, which will be headed by this man, the ice-cool Ai Ogura.
He said yesterday he was nervous on the grid ahead of that 10-lap sprint. First time he'd started at the head of the grid in the MotoGP World Championship. He himself, I think, thought that he was going to have something late on in that sprint for Bagnaia. We know, I mean, he's kind of the new rival in terms of tyre whisperer, isn't he, with Enea Bastianini in MotoGP. If he's in the mix, if he's in contention in those last sort of 7 or 8 laps here this afternoon, well, you do know that Ogura's going to have a cracking chance of ending this long sequence of no success for Japanese fans as we get to view this massive, sprawling Brno circuit. What a track this is. That's why they call it the Adrenaline Factory. hard-braking, sharp undulation. 73 metres, I think, is the high to low of this Brno circuit. It's got the biggest deviation of the whole Grand Prix calendar. As always, in fuel conservation mode, fuel economy mode, goes Fermin Aldeguer. Getting a cheeky toe behind him to save fuel as well. It's Jorge Martin.
Every little helps, as they say. And this is the long lap penalty loop approaching now. Over to the right as Jorge Martin looks. We're now going to ride on board with him. And Jorge Martin follows Fermin Aldeguer through that long lap penalty loop. Of course, you've got to stay within to the right of that second white line there, and then you're not allowed to do what Jorge Martin has done there and go out onto that green tarmac. That will be considered exceeding track limits and an illegal long lap penalty. On Friday, Martin was going that route, which is why you could see the black rubber lines through that green tarmac on the exit of turn 7. Clearly one or two teams queried that, and they have clarified and changed the parameters, if you like. Martin will not be allowed to go out there when he serves his 2 long lap penalties.
He's done more long laps this weekend than fast laps as Jorge Martin. His prime mission right from the get-go in FP1 was to get through there at every opportunity. It's very, very dirty, very, very dusty, of course, not used very often at all. So his primary mission was to have a bit of a clean-up operation throughout the Grand Prix weekend, clear a bit of dirt, lay a bit of rubber down. We've seen him go through there a couple of times with his knee and his elbow on the tarmac. Once again, we've seen spectacular action from the Martinator. One moment on Friday when there's that jaw-dropping shot of him with his shoulder down pretty much going through turn 13. He is all action, but he's going to need to be here this afternoon with those 2 long laps, making it a pretty complicated Brno Grand Prix coming up for the Spanish rider.
It's going to make the start very important for Jorge Martin. In an ideal world, to try and gain places, but he doesn't want to drop himself into that midfield pack on the first lap, because that will just pile on the pain with the long lap penalties. He can't just wait until the end of the race to serve those long laps. Once he gets the information, once he gets the message on his dashboard, which if the evidence of the Moto3 and Moto2 races is anything to go by, it'll probably come somewhere on the second lap. He will then have 5 laps to serve 2 long lap penalties. If it's a single long lap, you've got 3 laps. If it's a double long lap, you have 5 laps to serve that penalty.
25-year-old Japanese rider then, Ayagura, top 5 in 6 of our opening 8 Grand Prix so far this season. He's been 4th over the line in the last 2. He has knocked on the door of plenty of podiums so far this season. Clearly, we've seen on more than one occasion the potential to take that breakthrough first win. Is today going to be the day? 200 Grand Prix start, though, today in the top class for the Top Gun Maverick Vinales. Let's get his thoughts with Jack.
Yeah, just saying, it's a long walk down to his grid box from here. Maverick, firstly, congratulations, 200 MotoGP starts, an incredible achievement, and it comes on a weekend where it feels as though starting to find your mojo again.
Yeah, everything is starting to feel much better, especially with the shoulder. In any case, I arrived really exhausted to the race, so I'm really with no energy left, but this is what it is, so the best way we can really go through this is putting a lot of effort, and every weekend I think we are going to be better. However, I think this weekend was a significant improvement, not only on physical condition, also the feelings with the bike. So I'm ready for this race, so I will try to put a good rhythm and build up a good race for SM.
Hope it's a good 200 for you. Good luck.
Thank you, mate.
12th on the grid for the 200 start for Maverick Vinales. Is then your rather depleted Brno grid here today?
Ayagura, Fabic Gianantonio and Pecco Bagnaia on the front row. Of course, rear tyre was a important factor yesterday. Everyone will be on the medium rear today. Marc Marquez bumped up to 4th ahead of Diogo Moreira, and Raul Fernandez up onto row 2. Pedro Acosta 7th ahead of Frankie Morbidelli, who came through Q1 with Jorge Martin, who is now up onto the 3rd row with a double long lap penalty to serve. Fermin Aldeguer will be on screen next from 10th on the grid. He heads row 4 ahead of Joan Mir and Maverick Vinales. Fabio Quartararo, first Yamaha on the grid in P13 ahead of Luca Marini, who crashed late on yesterday, and Enea Bastianini 15th on the second of the Tech 3 KTMs. Jack Miller next up in 16th place for Pramac Yamaha ahead of Alex Rins, who got a tyre pressure penalty of 8 seconds yesterday, which dropped him to last place. Brad Binder, the 2020 winner, goes up 2 places from where he qualified, 20th up to 18th ahead of Cal Crutchlow. The reason he goes up 2 is because Toprak Razgatlioglu took a 3-place penalty and slips to the back.
Yeah, Razgatlioglu, his best sprint finish yesterday, although he was outside the point scoring place as he was once again top Yamaha. Just quickly going back to Maverick Vinales. It's been a pretty storied career, hasn't it, so far for the 31-year-old? 200th MotoGP start, and he has that accolade of being one of just 5 riders in Premier Class history to win for 3 different brands: Suzuki, Yamaha and Aprilia. If he was ever to find himself on the tops of the podium for KTM, well, he would be the first rider ever to do so for 4 different manufacturers. What for Maverick to be proud of in his previous 199 Grand Prix starts, as seeking a bit of cool air, a bit of aircon. Here's our pole starter, Ayagura. Aprilia could do with a bit of a pick-me-up, couldn't they, after what's unfolded over the last couple of Grand Prix also. What a time to arrive on the scene at Trackhouse Aprilia for Francesco Guidotti, former Parrot Ducati boss, former factory KTM team boss, slotting in eventually full-time to replace the departing Davide Brivio as the head of the American-based crew. And a little chat there with road racing star Davey Todd from back in the UK. There's Mark Cavendish as well, Tour de France legend, Sir Mark Cavendish, I should say. Pedro Acosta, then his 50th MotoGP start today, looking to bounce back from the sprint exit. Let's get the thoughts of his crew chief, Paul Trevathan.
Yeah, from the front of the 3rd row of the grid now is Pedro. I imagine a bit of frustration, obviously, coming from yesterday, but feel as though Pedro, once again, it's going to be an afternoon where he's going to try and get the maximum out of it and just see where he ends up in a mirage of Aprilias and Ducatis.
Yeah, exactly, mate. You know, there's maybe a bigger group of guys strong here, you know, so it's about getting that feeling straight away. Pace-wise, we've been pretty good all weekend. Overall, we're a little bit further back on the grid than we wanted to be, but if we get a good go off the line, and then we can get into that first corner, and I think he's got something to go with the guys at least.
34 degrees ambient temperature. I imagine track temp getting closer to 60.
Yeah.
Front tyre, rear tyre, how much are you going to have to look after them?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much the wear on this track, but it is the temperature, so both front and rear, you know, so again, it's not trying to be caught in a big group, trying to get a bit of fresh air and look after the rear, you know, try to bring it up in a good way and make sure we don't overcook it at the beginning.
Thanks, Paul. Have a good one.
Thank you, mate. Thanks.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Acosta's crew chief, Paul Trevathan. Some battle it was, wasn't it, between Acosta and Marc Marquez at Balaton Park a couple of weeks ago. We'd love more of the same. Over 21 laps coming up shortly in Brno. Well, we said the boss is on site, the boss is present, and there's some late words, late pep talk from Valentino Rossi to Fabio Di Gianantonio. 115 Grand Prix wins for the Doctor. Number 1, numero uno, came right here almost 30 years ago, back in 1996, where he celebrated so strongly. He veered to right and almost went careering into the pit wall, didn't he? Well, Diogo Moreira had a potential for an excellent sprint yesterday. He was running inside the top 3. He's got great potential in the Czech Grand Prix here this afternoon. The Brazilian on the 2nd row. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Lucio Cecchinello with Jack.
Yeah, Diogo once again the leading light for Honda, and he showcased yesterday, Lucio, that he's pretty dynamite off the line and in the opening laps. What's possible today for the Brazilian?
Well, you know, it's very important to have a good start, definitely. If he can have a good start, I think he has a quite good pace. I wouldn't say that he can play for the podium because the other competitors are a little bit, you know, more competitive. But definitely, it's possible to think about top 4 or 5 position. Yeah, it's possible.
Well, let's hope so. That would be a great result for you with the team. Good luck, Lucio.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Lucio Cecchinello, of course, who will forget as well. What a moment it was for Lucio and the LCR Honda squad right here in Brno 10 years ago in 2016, when Cal Crutchlow, who's back on the LCR Honda this weekend, continuing to deputise for injured Johann Zarco. Cal Crutchlow, the winner in that 2016 Brno MotoGP race, the first British winner in the top class in 35 long years since the late great Barry Sheen won at Anderstorp in Sweden all the way back in 1981. What a day that was.
Yeah, what an incredible event. Of course, in very different weather conditions to this here today, with blazing sunshine, ambient temperatures way over 30s. We heard from Jack. Track temperature will be closing in on 60 degrees. So it's very important to manage the temperature in your tyres as we go through this Grand Prix and get yourself some empty tarmac if you can. With the Grand Prix just coming under 15 minutes from lights out. It's managing your body temperature at the moment, I think, which is the main issue for the riders who have all vacated the grid and headed for the sanctuary of the air-conditioned pit boxes.
Yeah, it's a hot one. It is a very hot afternoon, no question about that. The hottest weather we've had since our opening Grand Prix in the tropical climates of the Czech International Circuit in Brno. So any respite you can get from the blazing sunshine, most welcome as we continue our build-up then to this Grand Prix of Czechia. It'll be interesting to see Moreira going from the middle of that second row now, bumped up to 5th place with Marco Bezzecchi's absence. You know, he was superb off the line yesterday and immediately got himself up inside the top 3. Ralph Fernandez, one of Prix rider that has taken profit of Bezzecchi's misdemeanor yesterday because he gets pushed onto the second row of the grid. And despite the fact that he's going to be suffering with a bit of fatigue, a bit of tiredness late on in his Grand Prix with the bout of appendicitis, Ralph Fernandez has shown he's got podium potential here this weekend.
Yeah, Moreira not afraid to get stuck in, is he, on the first lap, even as a MotoGP rookie. It says for Aprilia, their hopes entirely rest on the shoulders of Trackhouse in all probability today, with Agura on pole and Ralph Fernandez 6th. Of course, just the one factory team Aprilia on the grid. That is Jorge Martin with his 2 long laps to serve.
Marc Marquez from the head of the second row now in 4th place. And the 93 make it back-to-back Grand Prix wins in 2025 to seriously ignite his championship challenge. He will sense himself that this is a great chance to really jump all over the beleaguered factory Aprilia team while they're down. Just shows how quickly things can change, doesn't it, in MotoGP? Doesn't feel like it's too far away. A distant memory, I'm sure it feels like now for Aprilia, since we were in the Tuscany Mountains at Mugello. That incredible performance by Aprilia and Marco Bezzecchi on that occasion. Let's get the thoughts, though, of a rider who won here in 125s back in 1996. His first ever Grand Prix win. Valentino Rossi's with Jack.
Yeah, great to be joined by Valentino. We'll touch on Fabio Giannantonio in a second. OK, no problem. Valentino is just running off to grab a very, very quick word with Pecco Bagnaia. Come back to me in a second. Of course, priorities to make sure that he gives Pecco some final instructions.
He's right on screens, is Valentino. He's going to hop it then quickly back to Jack. So, yeah, we'll pick it up once again with the doctor.
Well, easy first question, Valentino. What did you have to say to Pecco? Victorious yesterday. Any words of advice just then?
Yeah, yesterday Pecco was fantastic, and is really, really an important victory for him because arrived after a lot of difficult in the last year and a half. So I say to him that if he do also today like yesterday, it's okay.
Of course, the big story coming into today, the World Championship leader, Marco, not racing. What's your opinion on what we've seen unfold over the last 24 hours?
I think that Marco did a mistake, but sincerely I don't expect that he cannot race. But it's like this.
And looking finally on Fabio Giannantonio, huge opportunity today, middle of the front row. The information of the medium tyre yesterday, I imagine, is going to be a big help.
Yes, because yesterday at the end the soft was better, but Fabio have a great pace, and he starts from the P2. So if he's able to make a good start and a good first lap, I think that he have the pace for a fight for the podium.
Thanks, Valentino. Great to see you here.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, fantastic. The thoughts of Valentino Rossi there. Well, the boss, he's the manager and mentor, and Marco Bezzecchi. We know where his allegiances are going to lie in this hot topic, the big debate about the penalty yesterday for Bez. Clearly, he feels that maybe that one race ban was slightly harsh. As we get set then for the Czech national anthem coming up very, very shortly. It's scorching heat in that full leathers. A much needed win in the sprint yesterday, as Rossi said about his charge, Pecco Bagnaia. Can he charge to his first double victory since the Japanese Grand Prix last October? We're going to take a breather here in the commentary box for the Czech national anthem.
Kde domov můj, kde domov můj, voda hučí po lučinách, bory šumí po skalinách. skví se jara květ, zemský ráj to na pohled, a to je ta krásná země, země česká, domov můj, země česká, domov můj.
As always, the Czech fans have brought the show. The aerial acrobatics are now going to kick this pre-race ceremony into another gear. National anthem has been expertly performed, and in less than 10 minutes' time, we will be racing for this 9th round of the 2026 MotoGP World Championship. And unprecedented in this season for the World Championship leader to be missing a spectator, Marco Bezzecchi, today. And what kind of opportunity does that present for the factory Ducati team? Pecco Bagnaia starts 3rd, Marc Marquez starts 4th. Davide Tardozzi with Jack.
Yeah, huge opportunity today for the factory Ducati squad with no Marco Bezzecchi on the grid. Is that going to be in the minds of both of your riders, thinking big long term, thinking about the championship?
As we said, we think race per race, but it's obvious that, as usual, we need to finish the race and collect points, whatever they are, but that's the main.
What about Pecco and Marc? How are they feeling coming into it? The soft yesterday, whereas everybody else on the medium, can that now work against you?
Yeah, we see today everybody will be with medium front and rear. So we'll see what it's going to be, because I'm sure that the front tire will need to be managed, because I'm sure that will give some issues, some trouble in the end of the race.
Thanks, Davide.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to factory Ducati boss Davide Tardozzi. Marc Marquez completed the win double here last year. The win in the Sunday Grand Prix made him the first Ducati rider in history to win 5 successive races. He has not finished off the podium in his last 6 starts here in the Grand Prix of Czechia as the 33-year-old Spaniard. Well, there were nerves, there was tension, and there were butterflies on pole position for Aguro Sant here yesterday. I wonder how he's feeling as he managed to keep that heart rate down here at the Adrenaline Factory, ahead of one of the biggest 21 laps of his career. Let's get the thoughts, though, of Aguro's trackhouse boss, Davide Brivio, with Jack.
Yeah, I think that's the right question, Bertie. Davide, how is I feeling? He said he felt the nerves yesterday. Surely that experience can help him ease into it and relax today.
Yeah, of course. Yesterday was a good test, and probably the double distance might help a little bit, because, as we know, is good on the end of the race and second part of the race. So let's see. Yeah, yesterday he managed well the tire, but it was so difficult to overtake for everybody. But maybe the long distance can create some show by the end, like Moto3, Moto2 we saw today.
Fingers crossed. Good luck.
Thank you.
We have indeed had 2 spectacular shows already in Moto3 and in Moto2. 2 of our most recent Moto2 world champions are gunning for the glory in this upcoming Grand Prix of Czechia. Aguro on pole, Moreira bumped up to P5 on the grid. Qualifying 6th was the best qualifying performance by a Brazilian in the top class since Alex Barros was 5th on the grid in Phillip Island in 2007. You do feel like there's a big result coming very, very quickly for the 22-year-old Brazilian. What about Pedro Acosta then? This is Grand Prix start number 50 in MotoGP, and that stat still stuck alongside his name in his previous 49 starts. The Shark still winless in the top class. He's now had 13 MotoGP podiums, which now means he's the rider with the most podiums without converting any of them into a Premier Class victory.
That said, I think he would take a podium if you offered him it today. Doesn't appear, and the grid position would reflect that he's had the same level of performance that he had in Balaton Park, where it was between Marc Marquez and Pedro Acosta. Jorge Martin then Bit of a complicated procedure for him coming up then from 9th on the grid. Of course, he has to try and attack in the early stages, but not make the same mistake he made at the start in Hungary, where he got the double long lap penalty. And then, of course, trying to serve those 2 long laps and keep himself in a position to still take some big points out of the absent Marco Bezzecchi.
In Brno in 2025, Jorge Martin made his comeback from yet another major injury here in the Grand Prix of Czechia last year. He's going to need another big comeback in this upcoming race to fight his way and recover from the 2 long laps. The Japanese Grand Prix in 2004, Makoto Tamada. The last time we had a race winner in MotoGP, born and bred in Japan. That is what the Japanese fans into the early evening over in the big cities in Southeast Asia are going to be hoping that Agura-san can finally break his winning duck. A win today for Pecco Bagnaia, a repeat of his sprint success yesterday, or any other Italian on this grid, which is minus Marco Bezzecchi, of course. It would be the 300th Premier Class victory for Italy. Pecco Bagnaia's got about, well, he's got 10% of those, hasn't he, if he does make it? He's 31 times a winner in MotoGP.
Yeah, of course, Fabio Di Giannantonio next to him, also looking to make that particular piece of history.
So 3rd on the grid, a sprint winner, factory Ducati star Pecco Bagnaia. Alongside him, it's another Ducati GP26 with Valentino Rossi watching trackside. Fabio Di Giannantonio will fire away from the front row in 2nd. But for the first time in 6 years, will he be the first winner from Japan in 22 years? Ai Ogura on pole position in Brno.